For ambitious dads caught between work and home, this is where you find your footing. Here's your host, Jeff Hittner.
Welcome to the Ambitious Dads Podcast. I'm your host, Jeff Hittner. After more than 200 conversations with fathers, I realized we're just not talking enough. Not about our fears, our ambitions, how our kids are really doing, or how we're holding up in the middle of it all. This podcast is for the dads trying to build something meaningful and be present at home. The ones caring a lot, questioning if they're doing enough, and craving honest conversations without the filters. If that's you, you're not alone. You're in the right place. Let's figure this out together. Well, today I am joined by Shazad Carbaidwala. He is a father, author, coach, program manager, former professional bodybuilder, humanitarian, and longtime prison visitation volunteer. So his life seems to sit at this fascinating intersection of discipline, service, and rebuilding. But today, what I'm most interested in talking to him about is obviously his biggest, most important role, and that is as a dad. Specifically, I want to know kind of what all of his life experience means when he's raising a daughter who is not just watching what he says, but how he lives. So Shazad, first of all, welcome. And my pleasure. Thank you for joining us. You've worn a ton of different hats, as I just mentioned in this brief intro. When your daughter looks at you, what do you want most for her to see?
It's a great question, Jeff. And again, thank you for having me on your show and allowing me to share with your listeners. My daughter is such an inspiration to me, and she has changed my life in so many ways. And the connection that we share together and the different projects that we've done together, what I want for her to know and understand and feel is that I'm fully supportive of everything she wants to do, and I'm right by her side as she's going through the journey of life. That she has a father that's very much engaged in everything that she's doing, and she knows that I'm a person that's going to support her in her life journey, and she's not doing it on her own.
I love it. Thank you for sharing that. And so you're a single dad now. And can you talk a little bit about this? We from an ambitious dad's perspective, it's so important because, half of our listeners, if we're going by basic statistics, are co-parenting, meaning they're, single parenting in one house, and then their sons or daughters are also at their partner's house and another percentage of the time. And we don't have enough conversation about what that's like, what it's like to be a single dad. If you were to share kind of the biggest challenges or the biggest misperceptions even around the effort it takes to be a single dad who's also working, what would you share with everybody?
Transparency and communication is critical. As you're going through the process of being a single parent, it's really, really important that you keep the lines of communication with your ex-partner and making sure that you are able to properly communicate about what's going on with your child's life. There's changes that are happening, things are evolving, communications that are being had with your kids, and it's important. I want to say, Jeff, it's critical that you align that with your ex-partner on properly raising your child and having the right expectations in place, because in order to do that, there's got to be communications, right? When you go through the process of separation, it doesn't end there when you have children. It gets magnified, because then you really living in separate households, the transition, depending on what the custody agreement is or the parental plan is, it's really, really important that you keep that lines of communication open. And that's the daily journey that I go through every single day, is making sure that I'm open with my dialogue and transparent.
What's the hardest part about that emotionally? Because as we all know, when we end a relationship with someone, if we don't have children, it's pretty different, the healing process and moving on. When we have to do exactly what you just said, which is find a way to communicate on a daily basis for our kids' sake, it's a whole different ballgame. So, what's that like emotionally? How have you managed that emotionally? And let me also mention for our audience. So, your daughter is 8 now, right?
She is, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So talk a little bit about that from an emotional perspective for you.
Yeah, I would love to say that there's a blueprint for all of this, right? You follow a chart and okay, go through this phase and this phase. And that's what my expectations were, Jeff, initially is like, all right, this has happened. Now there's going to be different phases because I'm very strategic, very tactical in my daily practice, in the businesses that I run, operationally with the organization that I've been working for 20 years. It's not like that though. You can go through different phases. Like for example, the grieving process of separation. I was married for 13 years. We were best friends. We did everything together, and then there was a shift in that. So you have to allow yourself to heal, but then you also have to follow a plan. And that plan is, for me, there's not a minute that goes by that I don't think about my daughter. Not a minute. She's my inspiration. She's saved my life in so many different ways, and we could tap into some of that. But you have to get self care. This whole journey that we're taking and the things that I'm involved with, I I have very little control over my life, Jeff. It's my team that surround me, that helps me, guides me, mentors me, that gives me the support. But you have to tap into that. If you think you could do things on your own, it's difficult. It's challenging, especially the things that I want to accomplish with my daughter. It takes a village to raise a child, and I recognize that, and I try to get support as much as I can, whether that's therapy, my own personal training practice, working with kids, coaching, whatever I do, and the physical activity that I endure and the goals that I have. I put a plan to that. I communicate with my daughter, with my family, with my friends, and then I get all the support that I need. But again, it falls back on communication and transparency. If you keep things locked in, you don't communicate, people don't know. People can't offer that support.
Most of the dads that I have interviewed, one of the topic that seems to come up a lot is that they don't have a lot of other people to lean on for emotional support. They don't have a lot of other dads they talk to. And then in the process of separation or divorce, that adds a whole nother element. So is this something that you've had to intentionally build, or you always had that village and they just came together around this for you?
Yeah, no, I've always created, you know, an organization, right? My personal brand coinciding with my corporate brand, and try to mix that in with my life's mission. And my life's mission is to always help people in any way I can. And that's what I try to instill with my daughter, right? Um, but you can't help the masses without having infrastructure in place and a team in place that also support your life's mission and personal brand. And that's what I've kind of taught my daughter is always act in kindness, be respectful. And look, we can't control what other people say or do, but we can control our actions. So I always try to teach that to my daughter. Always control your actions and act in kindness.
Thank you for sharing that. When you and your ex separated, what sort of support did you put in place around that for your daughter and for each other? Because again, I think this is really important for people to hear, because so many of us are going through this as well.
Yeah, and as far as, my daughter was young. Um, probably, I'm probably shortchanging this, but she probably didn't understand what was going on fully, and what the impact was going to be. Right? You separate, you start living separately. You have to align on what the parenting looks like. The child's going to have two different homes now. So I think that was, for my daughter, it was important that we aligned, myself and my ex-partner, on what that communication was going to be to her and how were we going to support this change, right? Because, Jeff, to be honest with you, my life didn't change that much. I'm still living in the same house, you know. But for my daughter, she's going to transitioning back and forth from one house to another based on the parental agreement, right? So I was very cognizant of that, and I lost. That was my issue. Is I was losing a lot of sleep thinking about that and what that change was going to be, and how my daughter was going to adapt to this new life, right? So, getting her some help, right? Just kind of like what I mentioned about, it takes a team. If you feel like you could take the burden of all that on your own, it's really difficult. It's very stressful. But putting a team around her, having family around, family, friends, and getting her therapy and things like that. And I thought that was the best thing that we could have done. And most important, aligning with my ex-partner on, look, that what do you think? Give me your perspective on how you think we could communicate this to her effectively, and having her understand that there's going to be a change, and then seeing how she would react and be able to talk to her about that, right? Giving her an opportunity in a space where she could also communicate and let us know. She's 8, she's young, but you know what? She also has a mind of her own, and it was really good. And at the end of the day, I could honestly say that it felt like a seamless process, and she's done amazingly through this whole process. Very resilient.
Well, it sounds like you were very intentional in that process. So you and your ex deserve a lot of credit for that.
Thanks. Yeah.
When, as a single dad, and by the way, the term single, I mean, as a co-parent, right? You have, you both have custody of your daughter, right? So, but where do you, maybe when do you feel most alone as a dad?
When she's not with me.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like I mentioned before, there is not a minute that goes by where I don't think of her. I like to say this, when I wanted children, right? I love kids. I work with kids in my personal training practice, and I knew I was going to love my child. I knew. The way that I am with kids, my nieces, my nephews, my cousins, I didn't realize I was going to fall in love with her. And that connection we've built, has been just amazing. She's at the paramount of everything that I do. I think about her because she's such a big inspiration in my life.
How do you handle that transition day when she goes and stays with her mom, which I can imagine to be a really difficult day? How do you take care of yourself on days like that?
I work out a lot. I do a lot of self-care. I have great friends, great family. Keep myself surrounded by that. But what the beauty of the things that I do in my life, my philanthropy organization, my coaching, personal training practice is I'm very passionate about those things. So I surround myself with positivity and do the things that I'm passionate about, and always keep my life's mission at the paramount of acting in kindness and helping people in any way that I can. Because I'll tell you, man, I've been through the ringer. I've lived a trivial life as far as the things that I did when I was younger, the knucklehead choices that I made. I wrote about it in my book. And if I didn't have people that guided me and mentored me and gave me second chances, I would not be talking to you right now, Jeff.
It sounds like you have a real skill for asking for help too, at least in this, this big part of your life. So I'm sure that's made a big difference as well. And too many of us as dads aren't very good at asking for help. As a father to an 8-year-old daughter, what do you think she's learning about men from how you show up?
Yeah, support. As her father, I've instilled in her that communicate. Like the thing that I fear, Jeff, is I'll give you an example. She grows up, she's getting invited to a party. There may be, in this day and age, who knows? There could be drugs there. There's going to be alcohol there. There's going to be things that are going on that I wouldn't want her to be engaged in. But it's there. Those vices are all out there. I wouldn't want her to communicate to one of her friends. I would want her to be like, Dad, I've been invited to a party. There could be this there, this there. These are the things. What do you think? Give me that opportunity to help support her in any way. And sometimes that gets lost, right? Because of lack of communication, lack of empathy, and lack of understanding. But for me, going through some of those phases in my life, I never passed judgment on anybody. Who am I to pass judgment on anybody? So I take it all in stride and just being there and asking my daughter every chance that I get with her is, how's your day? How's your day going? Anything you want to talk about with Dad? Anything we could work on together, and just being there, and doing fun things with her and having her experience life. I had a great upbringing. Yeah, I made some choices that I'm not happy about, but now I get to talk about those choices, and those choices were the catalyst of who I am today.
I love it. Do you have any specific rituals with your daughter that you do every day or every week to kind of project a lot of this, relationship and open communication and that sort of thing?
A couple of things we do. We play a lot together. Being having one child, I play multiple roles, sibling. So a father, of course, and a lot of the things we do together, it's me and her. We do one-on-one, and when she's going to the water park, going down the water slides, I'm right behind her. If she's at the park, I'm going down the slides with her. If she's at McDonald's play place, I'm going down those little slides with her. So we do a lot of things together. So those are some of the things that we do together. Daily rituals, we pray together. We also work out. She's starting to do a little bit of exercise now, so we've been starting to do that together as well. So my main thing is just active engagement.
I love that, and I also think, especially as you said, like you're both her sibling and her parent, right? Because she has no siblings, and since I have 2 boys, I know that there are days where I am what I call in my work default dad, when I'm just like totally depleted and have nothing left, and I am like, thank God they have a sibling because they can play with each other, and I can lean on the older sibling taking care of the younger sibling and playing a few games together while dad kind of gets a little bit of rest or is making a meal.
Yeah.
You don't have that, right? So when I am not in default dad mode, meaning when I have all the energy in the world to be fully present and fully focused on them, that's one thing. But when you are going through default dad mode where you are exhausted because you've spent the whole day doing all of your work, how do you manage that since she probably doesn't want you to take a break at any point?
Yeah. No, it's doing things together. And she's got her moments where she wants her independence too, which is great. I love seeing that. But that's evolved with her age now. She's doing things on her own now, and I want her to have that independence. So we create that space. So it gives me an opportunity to kind of self-reflect on the day and kind of give myself a little bit of a break. But for me, is in order for me to stay upright and be as supportive as I can be for my daughter, it's very important that I do my self-care. I work out every day, eat properly. My diet is very stale, Jeff. I don't go to restaurants and eat out. Chicken, rice, broccoli, fruits, vegetables. I try to stay as healthy as possible so I can stay engaged with her and have the energy to support her with all the things that she wants to do. She does basketball, gymnastics, Girl Scouts. What else is she in? She's in a bunch of other sports. Her activities are endless. So she likes doing all those things. It's important for me to stay engaged in those activities and be as supportive as possible with her development.
And when you do need a break, when it doesn't matter, you've got her full time and it's only Wednesday and you've got her all week and you need 30 minutes to yourself. How does that conversation work with her?
Maybe I need a little bit of time. Why don't you go read a book, play some games? The place that I live is amazing. I mean, it's just a beautiful environment. I live in the suburbs, and she's got a ton of family or friends nearby that, she's good about going to a friend's place and playing. And I think that's really, really important. As much as I'm engaged in her life, I also feel like development with her peers is critical. So understanding that, I understand that going through the journey of growing up, she's not going to have her siblings. She doesn't have siblings to rely on. So that support needs to come and needs to be channeled from somewhere. And I would love, and I'm building upon that, is for her to express that and channel that through me. So when I need some time, I can just communicate with her, and she's amazing about that. She's like, "Yep, I'm good." But Jeff, I'll be honest with you, it doesn't happen often though, because my time is limited with her as it is.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't want to jeopardize that by saying, "Okay, well, I'm tired now." Like for me, that's an excuse. For me, that's an excuse. I'll be tired when she goes to bed. That's when I'll be tired.
Well, I definitely don't have it as easy when I tell my kids I need a few minutes, whether it's to prepare a meal or something else. It usually takes a little bit of conversation. At the very least, it takes my son one of them at least, coming into the kitchen and saying, "But Daddy, I'm bored," and me responding, "Great. Like now you can use your mind," or something to that effect, right? But I also have this goal in my head that I want my kids to be a little bored because all the research says how critical that is, right? To so many things, to their resilience, to their creativity, for their sense of self, not to be overstimulated, all those things. So I appreciate your perspective. What's keeping you up at night most when it comes to thinking about your daughter and fears about life related to parenting and that sort of thing?
It's just her relationships. My friend circle and my support Um, I've I've known them for 40 years. We've grown up together. We've taken so many trips together. We know each other really, really well. The beauty of that, Jeff, too, is they all used to live in different parts of the world. When I moved back to Chicago, it just coincidentally, they all moved back to Chicago. And we all live 5 minutes away from each other.
Hmm.
So, I mean, how amazing is that? My support circle, like I could ride my bike to some of the houses, right? So it's like, I want her to have. That's what keeps me up at night is having those meaningful relationships that she's able to lean on them as well, and have a good team in place for her to be successful in life.
What have you learned about your own sort of emotional development while being a dad?
It's made me a lot stronger. Um, you don't envision going through that process of separation, right? It's it's kind of, especially in my faith, like going through a separation is almost taboo. Um, so it's like going through that process, and with me, like and most of us are, we want to know what's going on. What are the next steps? And I've found going through that process of separation, the legality of it, how time consuming it is and how taxing it is mentally, and going through assumptions and things like that. That's been a challenge. But I learned a lot of resiliency through that process. It's almost like a whole chapter of my life going through that process. And what's the impact there is now, like this conversation with you, Jeff, I can have it because I know what the process is and going through it. And the meaningful part about that is, I'm all about transparency and helping people that are going through that process as well, and is a source of guidance and just leadership throughout that process. Because yeah, there was a lot of uncertainties, right? You don't know what you don't know, and I didn't know a lot about that process. So understanding it, learning it, it's like another notch on my tool belt. So yeah, I took it as a good thing, a positive, versus it could be easily construed as a negative.
Where do you come to find all of your insights around fatherhood? Do you read books on it? Is there something you follow or watch? Is it conversations with your village? What is it that has helped you grow as a dad from that perspective?
I lean on my family and friends for that guidance. Some of my friends and my family, they have older kids. So like kind of going through that journey, just gaining some insight and perspective on how how they've been parenting their children and things like that, and kind of formulating my own plan around that. So kind of how kind of how I kind of do it.
I really appreciate, as you've said throughout this conversation, that you didn't really have a roadmap to figuring out how to separate in like the healthiest way possible for your daughter. I think there is an assumption out there that separation has to be mean and nasty and a disaster for everyone. And I think we're just now starting to rewrite the book of what that can look like. So really appreciate how highlighted that. When when you think about like the biggest challenges co-parenting, I mean, you've talked about communication, but what are some of the other big hiccups or you know um, big trap doors that you can accidentally find yourself in when you're trying to parent with someone else that loves your child with
Yeah.
the same fierce determination as you?
Yeah, finding that common balance of sharing time together as well. Um, the transition for a child can be really, really tough if there's misalignment with the parents. And going through that process, my daughter saw some of that, right? She was there. She was present. So moving forward is aligning on how to properly co-parent and compromise. That's the critical word, a compromise, because we both have different expectations of what we want for our daughter. Like for example, my daughter, something that was instrumental in my upbringing and my life and changed me in a lot of positive ways was I was an athlete. I played sports starting at age of 5 years old. That was my life goal was to become a professional athlete at age 5. So I played sports all the way through, and I still participate in a lot of competitive sports. So that's one of the things that with my daughter, I wanted her to be able to play sports and things like that. Well, aligning on what those expectations are with my ex-partner are very important. That's just one of the things. Then education, religion, faith, all those things aligning on that has been, I wouldn't say it's been a challenge, but it's been part of the process, right, of separation to make sure that we're making the best decisions for our daughter. But part of making the best decisions for our daughter is getting her perspective too. Like with me, I'm always asking my daughter, hey, T-ball's coming up. You want to play some T-ball? You want to practice a little bit? Soccer's coming up. Basketball's coming up. Hey, what do you think about gymnastics? Are you having fun? You feel like you're getting a lot out of it? How are your coaches? Things like that. Keeping that dialogue not only with her, but with her village as well, and making sure that there's alignment there as well. So it just all falls back on just sharing and communicating. And I'm a pretty introverted person. So that's what my daughter has brought out of me is, Dad, you can't be introverted. You have to talk. And I've learned so much through that with her.
It's funny. I do the opposite when it comes to new activities. If I invite my kids to give me their opinion on if they want to try a new sport or whatever, the answer is always no. So, we learned that a while ago, and it's no different for either of our sons. So, for instance, this past spring, we signed up our kids for music. One's playing guitar and the other the piano, and we didn't tell them. And like 2 days before, we said, you're going to music, on Saturday morning. We're going to check it out. Immediately a meltdown ensued. And of course, lo and behold, we get them to their music class and they both love it. And now they do music every week. So I think every parent has a different experience with offering the opinions of their children into the mix when deciding on some of these things, for sure.
Yeah. It's just that interesting thing. There's so many books that have been developed about parenting, but there's no firm blueprint of steps that you have to process. You have to adapt. You have to be a chameleon and adapt to their personalities.
Yeah. Yep, absolutely. If there was one thing you would want to tell all the other dads listening, either about parenting a daughter or being a single parent, what would you want them most to take away from this?
Be present.
What does being present mean to you?
Active engagement as far as, when you're, for example, Jeff, when I take my daughter to soccer, gymnastics, basketball, whatever she's doing, Girl Scouts, be there in the moment. In the digital age of technology now, we have access to all the data that we need, right, at our fingertips on our phone. And it's really easy to get caught up in that. The work emails, business emails, whatever. And it's easy to kind of step away, look at that, send an email, But the impact there is what we're trying not to do with our children, right? Screen time. Trying to not eliminate screen time, but try to mitigate that as much as possible. We're kind of showcasing to them, we're like, well, mommy and daddy are doing it. Why can't I do it too? And try to be there and be engaged, watching, asking questions, but asking those questions that that, okay, my child fell down, sprained her ankle. I saw it. I was there. I know exactly what happened. I'm not getting assumptions from another parent or the coach. No, I was there. I saw what happened. That's kind of what I mean by being present. And it is difficult, right? In this day and age, both parents are working, um, stressful jobs, and a lot going on. Some work from home, so that work is not from 9 to 5 anymore. It's the whole entire day. That's my body of work with the things that I'm involved in. So my my work doesn't end at 5 o'clock. No, it goes on throughout the day. So making sure that when it's time to be present, that I'm present.
I have an interesting phrasing of this next question. So, if your ex would say this is like what you are weakest on in your fatherhood, what would she say it was?
Probably I don't give enough space
Hmm. To your
for
daughter.
yeah for more independence.
It's
Um,
so interesting when we frame questions from the, from a third party perspective, right? Um, we can be more objective sometimes. It's and how do you feel about that in terms of, I imagine also as, a super present dad that giving space is hard, especially when it's the person we love so much. So how do you try to offer that?
yeah, and another thing to that, Jeff, time is limited.
Yeah,
Even though
also
there's
true. You feel like you want to take advantage of every moment.
maximize it as much as possible. Yeah, I think it's something I got to work on. And figuring out what that balance is. What I've tried to do is get her more engaged with her peers and
Yeah,
her friends, and that that comes with its own challenges because um, she's a girl, and uh, I typically I'm working with moms for scheduling. You know, um, hey mom, is your daughter available for a play date? Another thing, Jeff, that kept me up at night a lot was what is that going to look like when that separation takes place? Um, and luckily, my mom also lives with me as well, so that's great. But when the mother is no longer in the house, you're dropping your daughter off at a man's house, like, and what do the optics of that look like? And I'll tell you what, there hasn't been no change. There hasn't been any change. But that's what, in full transparency, that's what kind of kept me up at night as well as how my relationships, if they change, that's fine. But I didn't want my daughter's relationships change because of
got
the
it.
things that transpired.
So having to create relationships that maybe your ex had been maintaining with some of the parents, now you also have to maintain with those parents in order to keep that kind of relationship going between your daughter and their daughters. That makes a lot of sense. Yeah, that can be something that might also feel a little intimidating too, right?
Yes, but Jeff, that's the part that I'm very prideful on is my active engagement with her. That was a seamless process. I didn't, there were people coming up to me and be like, hey, nothing's changing. Like, daughters are still going to be coming to your house. Like, we know what type of person you are and what type of parent you are. Like, and that that made me very emotional. That was hard. Hearing that made me very happy, and I was like, okay, good.
I love that, and I can see it in your eyes too. That it would really, it would make me emotional to hear that as well. That trust. Shazad, thank you so much. This has been a really fascinating and lovely conversation, and I have no doubt your daughter is in very wonderful and special hands. And it's been a pleasure speaking with you. And good luck.
Thanks, Jeff. And I just want to say, I'm so appreciative of you giving me the platform to just kind of socialize and communicate to the rest of the fathers and parents out there. And what you've built is something phenomenal to give opportunity for people to speak. So thank you so much for having me on the show.
Thank you. That means a lot to me too. Thank you so much.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of the Ambitious Dads Podcast. If you enjoyed this conversation and want more insights on balancing ambition and fatherhood, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss an upcoming episode. Check out the links in the description for our newsletter and more resources to help you live intentionally as a dad. See you in the next episode.